Kamrimo to this webinar, and good afternoon to those joining from India, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's joined from the rest of the world. My name is Jordan Kinsum Siring Namchu, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Now, before we proceed, I would like to put forth before you a few rules that would help all of us to smoothly carry out and maintain the decorum for the webinar. Yeah. So firstly, it is my foremost duty to inform you that the webinar is being recorded, and we will upload this recording in our official RLCWS YouTube handle. I would like to request all those who have joined to kindly use your respective microphones and cameras accordingly. Secondly, I would like to request all the attendees to kindly turn off the microphones throughout the duration of the webinar. Now, should there be anything that is to be communicated to me or to the speaker, I strongly urge everybody to kindly use the chat box to convey your message to us. I will assure you that the organizers of the webinar will take your communication into cognizance and send it to me. The third thing that I want to highlight is that for the question and answer session for this webinar, that'll happen after the webinar, of course, I would like to request everybody, those who have questions for the speaker, to kindly use the chat box to type your question along with your name so that I can convey your question to the speaker. And lastly, should any one of you, for some reason or the other, lose your connection and find yourself out of the webinar, please do not panic. I would like to request you to kindly click on the same webinar link that was sent to you. Our co-hosts will admit you in the webinar, and you can sit back and enjoy the show. Now, these being highlighted, I'd not like to waste more time, and I'd like to call upon the President of the Society, Ryen Stefan Daehler, to deliver his address.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kamrimu, on behalf of the Róng Lepcha Culture and Welfare Society, I welcome you all to the webinar that is entitled Róng, that is Lepcha Script, and Typography, a Liberal Enquiry. This presentation will be made by Ryen Stefan Daehler. He is a linguist. His credentials are impeccable for him to dwell on this particular subject, having given years of study on the language and the development of the script. His IT skills and background have given him the edge, I think, in this work. I will leave it to Ryen Jordan, the moderator, to introduce the speaker in due course. So welcome, Ryen Stefan, and thank you for preparing your paper. I tend to think that the Lepcha language is long ripe for the taking. I'm also inclined to feel that academia is mostly focused outside, elsewhere. I admit that there may be innumerable cogent reasons for that, but still, I sometimes wonder whether it has really escaped their notice. So this is my sort of question. The subject of the day is based on the aspect of the language, one aspect of the language, that is the script, very important part, its evolution and the modern derivative. Each and every language has its own beauty. Languages of some communities and cultures have reached an advanced level of development, and some others have not been able to do so. Well, some have stagnated, and face the peril of languishing, I should say, in the academic backyard. On the lectures, many researchers and writers have come into contact with the lectures over the years and have made some interesting observations. I am tempted to select one very oft quoted one from General G.B. Mannering from his grammar of the Róng language that came out in 1876, wherein he writes, quote, "The language is far anterior to the Hebrew and Sanskrit. It is preeminently Ursprache, being probably, as I think, I may without fear of representation state it to be the oldest language extant," unquote. That was the crystallization of years of study of the Lepchas and the language that culminated in the two tomes that he produced, that is the Lepcha grammar and the Lepcha dictionary, which came out later. But it makes me wonder why a person who is a serious scholar would put his whole reputation as well as all his works at stake, as he did so, to make such seemingly controversial statement. I would like to hazard a guess. I think he wanted to entice the world or probably challenge the world to savor it. Well, after that, we have about a century passing, and then we have on the scene a grammar written by Dr. Helen Pleiss, a grammar of the Lepcha. This work, magnificent work, has to some extent nudged the community to see the open ripe field in the Lepcha studies. There are many other Lepcha personalities and others who have tried to give shape to the grammar over the years. I have not mentioned them for the sake of brevity. So it reminds me of a passage from the scriptures, quote, "The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few," unquote. So today, on this occasion of Ryen Stefan Daehler's webinar, I would like to also take this platform to make a small announcement of the society. The announcement is that Renu Jenny Bentley has joined this society as an honorary international associate. So you may be knowing her for sure, but then she is an associate researcher in the University of Zurich, but she is out and out a Lepcha scholar. So we welcome her abroad. So thank you very much. Let us go on with the show. Ryen, Jordan, please take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ryen President, for your introductory remarks. Now, without wasting any more time, let me get to introducing the speaker for today. I, on behalf of the RLCWS, would like to say that we are extremely honored to have the speaker for today's session, Ryen Stefan Daehler, who will be presenting a webinar titled Róng Script, the Lepcha Script, and Typography, a Liberal Enquiry. Ryen Stefan Daehler is a scholar of linguistics. Hailing from Switzerland, he is a teacher of languages, informatics, and music. He is also an information and technology developer, where his focus predominantly lies on web design and Asian fonts. Ryen Stefan has a keen interest in studies of Tibetan language and script, and has specialized in this field as a student of Lama Tenzng Phuntsog and Dr. Peter Lindegger. This is at Tibet Institute Rikon in Switzerland. His engagement in Buddhist studies is extensive, and he has also carried out an independent research on the history and culture of the Buddhist Kingdom of Sikkim. Ryen Stefan Daehler has been a research associate of the Sikkim Bhutia Lepcha Apex Committee, more popularly known as SIBLAC, since 2012, and is also the webmaster of SIBLAC, aside from being the webmaster of the Affected Citizens of Teesta, Drokpa, and Segyued Dratsang at Salugara. Ryen Stefan Daehler also has a plethora of research publications that focus on the themes of history of Sikkim and lecture studies. Thank you very much, Ryen Stefan, for agreeing to be the speaker for today's webinar. I think we should not waste any more time and go forward with your presentation.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is absolutely mine. All right. Great. Rong song Samsa Nimo. And for all non-lecture speakers, I'm one of them as well. Welcome to that presentation on the Lepcha Script. It's a feature unique to mankind that we attempt to make up for real or perceived deficiencies with real or invented substitutes. If we face something of which we do not know or understand the content or the context, we create one with the help of another talent unique to the human species, imagination. Compensation is a term firmly established in science since Alfred Adler's development of individual psychology in the early 20th century, and regarded, meanwhile, as an inborn capability of man to get along with lacks of whatever kind. We simply compensate for shortages with fictional creations of our own, in a degree inversely proportioned to our self-esteem, by the way. So this unusual mix of a lady's hair and a swarm of birds may be confusing at first sight. It will, however, take just a short moment for everyone among us to create his or her understanding or interpretation of that skillful drawing, producing 20 or 30 different stories instantly. And while all of our stories may hold some truth, we will, of course, not mistake our version with the truth as such. This deep-rooted pattern does, however, not only apply to the individual human being. Likewise, gaps in the collective memory relating to ancient times and generations are filled with imaginary narratives, which, if not true, are congenial inventions that satisfy our quest for integrity. This is a response so common that Italians coined the most current saying, "Se non è vero, è ben trovato." If it's not true, it's at least well conceived. In regard to the history of the Eastern Himalayas, we dwell in a profound area of conflict between two contrasting notions of the term history, creating both lack and abundance at the same time. On the one hand, we have the academic historiography, preferably relying on chronicles providing accurate details of date, time, and conditions of a given historical event, though sometimes running into nothingness when going back in time more than a few centuries. On the other hand, the traditional understanding of history in the Himalayan cultures may be characterized with the Tibetan label Namtar, a literary class of glorifying tales, arranging fact and legend as required, while blanking out aspects considered undesirable or irrelevant to yield a good story. They may often appear rather incomplete, vague, or even contradictory in terms of accuracy, but they are most comprehensive in regard to a holistic worldview, maintaining the splendid tradition of storytelling. While the academic approach a good many times has to settle for a "we do not know" or "we do not yet know," the Namdar always knows, or at least pretends to. All the same, the two notions should not be played off against each other. Both have their merits as well as their faults. The exactitude of the one will maybe not offer meaningful insight, while the gloomy narrative of the other will possibly not provide us with trustworthy, hard facts. Thus, it is with utmost respect and modesty we are trying to validate in the following a few of the narratives related to the Róng script that have been in circulation for a century or more. Since this is an exercise in the conflict zone mentioned before, our findings can't be expected to be in terms of true or false, but at best in terms of making sense or not. I'd like to inspect 4 common narratives. I've chosen for consideration 2 points regarding the creation of the script, one attributing it to Tikong Mensalo, and the other to Chögyal Chakdor Namgyal. Then to the narrative that the script was developed to spread Buddhism among the Lepchas, and finally a tale that ancient Lepcha manuscripts were destroyed by Buddhist extremists. To start with the endmost tale, it's a matter of fact that we do not know of a single Lepcha manuscript that could reliably be dated to the pre-1800s. A common narrative explains this oddity with a campaign of biblioclasm, meaning destruction of books, by the Buddhist monks in order to eliminate the competing literary heritage of the Róng folk. This accusation was first raised in writing by Mannering in 1876, and we do not know whether this is what he perceived personally or whether he recorded an existing oral tradition. Esteemed Lepcha elder Arthur Phoning, assessing that matter 100 years later, however, cautions us, I quote, "Colonel Mannering had given out that all the Lepcha books were collected and burned. This false and distorted notion was later repeated and taken up by the others too. But a little reflection on the matter makes it amply clear that it could not have been a fact." Unquote. Unfortunately, Phoning does not share his reflections, so we have to delve into the matter on our own with a look at the somewhat simplified timeline of Maya Liang. What we know of the early history of Sikkim is based on oral transmission and Namdar type records, with the blood brotherhood between Lepcha and Bhutia as a starting point, the historicity of which is generally accepted. In the late 13th or in the 14th century, Tikong Tek and Kibumsat mutually agreed upon a peaceful coexistence of their respective clans in what was later to become Tenzng. It must be assumed that with the entry of the Tibetans, their religion began to spread in the new habitat likewise, Buddhism grew in terms of influence to an extent permitting 3 learned lamas, globally addressed as Naljor Jeshi, to establish a Buddhist kingdom in the mid-17th century, imposing a Buddhist upper class on the tribals living with the same space, incorporating Lepcha and Limbu leaders in the position as ministers, generals, or Dzongpen. Considering the surviving manuscripts, it must be assumed that the alleged biblioclasm would have taken place around 1800. Taking into account further that this had been after a period of 400 years of Buddhist influence, including a final period of 150 years with powerful Buddhist dominance, we hardly find plausibility in the charge hawked. If ever, we would assume extremist Buddhists to target competing spiritual wisdom in particular. However, the native beliefs of the Rongkub represent a marked oral tradition with rituals, prayers, and incantations passed down from master to student exclusively, so much so that we actually face the downside of that very tradition. Ancient religious heritage is feared lost, as 2 of the most eminent Bongting, Samdukta So and Pentsiring Lepcha, passed away in 2011 or 2014, respectively, without having imparted their wisdom to a successor in time. So, what to torch? And if ever, why so late? Mayil had been transformed to a Buddhist kingdom long ago. Besides, Northern Buddhism in the tradition of Guru Rinpoche never resorted to the exclusion of forerunning spiritual traditions, quite the opposite. Over time, Mahayana absorbed countless pre-existing local traditions and incorporated hundreds of native deities into the pantheon of a basically non-theistic philosophy. After all, the tutelary deities of Sikkim are, without exception, of pre-Buddhist origin. So we find that the tale of intentional destruction of the ancient Lepcha manuscripts, a violation of human rights according to present standards, does not ring true, or at least deserves a big question mark. Since when in 1663, a few years after his coronation, Segyued, Phuntsog Namgyal, felt the need to secure his power with the well-known Lomun Tsong agreement, the text of which has been preserved. Excuse me. The deities of the Lepcha and the Limbu were invoked side by side with the Buddhist protectors to witness and defend the agreement and all those abiding by its rules. After all, this does not sound like a fierce clash of cultures. Not to be mistaken, we are quite certain that there were all the documents in Róng script, and they were destroyed most obviously. However, their destruction was hardly caused by fire, rather the opposite. The water is likely to be blamed. To illustrate that hypothesis, we may for a while just close our eyes and depend on our imagination and sense of smell. stepping into a bookshop in Darjeeling, in Damsang, in Kursang, or in Suffolk. So we step in, eyes shut, nostrils wide open, and we take a deep breath. What we smell is so common we hardly ever notice consciously. It's the smell of decay, the fog of mildewing paper. In plain language, the climate of the subcontinent is paper unfriendly, to say the least. Ancient Indians wrote on palm leaves with good reason. Chinese type or industrial paper decomposes if not properly cared for. The preservation of paper under local conditions is a true challenge, and as much as Lepcha elders may lament Western collectors having carried away hundreds of ancient Lepcha manuscripts, it must be said their transfer was probably the key to the very survival of these cultural treasures. Coming to the hearsay attributing the creation of the script to the desire of promoting the Buddha's teachings among the Róng, we have to bear in mind another characteristic of Northern Buddhism. The spread of the gentle doctrine took place to highest degree based on religious works written or printed in Sambhota script, popularly named Tibetan script, spanning distances of thousands of miles from Buryatia to Bhutan, from Kalmykia to Kham. Every educated devotee, from the humble novice monk right up to the Emperor of China, learned to read and write, Uchen at least. Displayed, we see a Tibetan text from mid-18th century, written by Emperor Qianlong's own hand. Learning considered a privilege, the Emperor of China learned a lot. Among others, he studied Buddhist philosophy, which required the study of Tibetan script beforehand. The idea of translating the sacred ancient wisdom using a completely new script for a comparably minor group of tribals just does not fit in this general scenario. Of course, the venture would have been appropriate for a Dharmaraja, but in the case of the third king of Sikkim, we may be led astray by wishful thinking. Chogyal Chakdor Namgyal enjoyed a rather short reign of 17 years, ascending the throne at the tender age of 14. He spent the first 7 years of his rule in exile in Tibet, reportedly excelling in his Buddhist studies and studies of astrology, being appointed personal astrologer to the 6th Dalai Lama. Back in Sikkim, priorities in Chakdor Namgyal's remaining lifespan were the enforcement of his rule, fiercely challenged by his elder sister, Bonbi Wangmo, the ambitious princess seen here in a mural at the Segyued monastery, as well as pushing back the Bhutanese troops that had invaded Sikkim in support of his rival sister. Besides, the Chogyal is remembered as the regenerator of the Panglak Seul rituals and as the creator of the Bangde Chan warrior dance. All these activities, including the restructuring and consolidation of his principality in close consultation with his spiritual guide, Lama Jigme Pao, must have kept him occupied to capacity. Hence, it's hard to believe he would have had the spare time to learn and analyze Róng Aring, to adapt, permitting him to develop a dedicated script based on the particular grammar and requirements of the language. Not to mention a convincing reason to do so, which is really difficult to make out. His creatorship is unlikely all the more as the basic work, the very foundation of the Lepcha script, called Lodzong, is virtually unique and without reference to anything the Chökyi may have seen and learned in the whole of his Tibetan Buddhist upbringing and education. Lodzong is a syllabary meticulously listing all the close to 8,000 syllables that can be clustered with the basic glyphs of the script. At the same time, it represents an extensive encyclopedia of the Róng language. And reading the Lodzong, or rather reciting in a given rhythm and melody, is a common rite among the Róng folk. To take the center passage of the second line here, no, it's the third. Lama, lam, lam, lim, lim, lom, lom, lum, loma, lem. That to follow 700 times, which I will spare you. So these are standalone features without matching any of the neighboring cultures, which is why the origin of the script may be assumed to lie within the Róng community itself. These considerations lend credibility to the native legends of the Lepcha, naming Tikung Mensalong as the creator of the Róng script. Variably portrayed as a shaman or bonting, a hunter or a scholar, he is a legendary personality who lived to the age of 300 years, according to some sources. As a historical figure, we have reason to believe he was a contemporary of Latsun Namka Jingme, acting as his advisor and guide after the opening of the Hidden Land in the first half of the 17th century. The royal history of Sikkim gives a detailed account of how Mensalong introduced Latsun Jembo to the sacred caves, hot springs, and rocks of Mail Yang. Marked red in the short excerpt here, it's an excerpt from the history of Sikkim. We say the name of Mensalong, and marked blue, the places mentioned by name, among them Larinimpup and Techempup. He was the one who intimately knew the ancient places of power that were to provide the basic topographical and spiritual frame of the overlaying Buddhist mandala, expanding from the hub of Trashiding in West Sikkim, where the most sacred Bunju ritual was celebrated yesterday and the day before yesterday. And taking the liberty of a pinch of heresy for once, we can't rule out that the wisdom of Mensalong was the actual source of the Tenzng Neyik, the guides to the sacred hidden land, composed or revealed as a dharma by Buddhist masters. Just as well as we may consider that Rivo Sangchu, the distinguished mountain smoke offering, is a Buddhist adaptation of a traditional Róng ritual. The bottom line then were that the ancient Róng spiritual heritage has neither been destroyed nor suppressed, but redefined to form the very core of a local Sikkimese Buddhist tradition. Mensalong's relevance, as well as his connection with Latsun Chembo, the patron saint of Sikkim, is confirmed by the presence of an ancient statue of the Lepcha scholar at the Sungma Kang of Dupdi Monastery, the only halfway authentic portrait of the Tigong. It sounds plausible that when working with Sikkim's patron saint, he realized the value and importance of written records and transmissions, whereupon he developed the writing system for Róng, an undertaking he was perfectly suited for due to his profound familiarity with the language and culture of his native tribe. All the same, obvious structural inconsistencies in Róng as known today provide evidence that the script underwent natural development, including later amendments and omissions that weren't the work of the original creator. As such, it's also thinkable that Mensalong refined an already existing writing system. To sum up our brief considerations, we found one of the initial legends to deserve trust, while rejecting the other three owing to various reasons. Let's not forget, however, that science is just the current state of misapprehension, according to a popular dictum. A supplementary note may be due regarding the repositories of Lepcha manuscripts in Western institutions, briefly alluded to before. Berlin, Vienna, and London libraries are known to hold a number of original documents scattered in different collections. For Vienna, they were collected by Nebeski Wojkowicz in the mid-20th century, while those in London were mainly brought in by Hodgson and Hooker in the run of the 19th century. Just look at that close-up. What an elegant handwriting. Isn't it breathtaking? It's a text written by probably Damsangmu, and it must be a religious text because in the fourth line right here you can see the Chenresi mantra spelled ma ni be mi hung. This scan is from the British Library. The British Library sponsored the program as part of the Endangered Archives project carried out by Renew Helene Plaisir, mentioned earlier, around 2010. She was granted access to the holdings of 5 open-minded collectors in Rongliang itself. The scans of these approximately 40 manuscripts are showcased at the website of the British Library, and a few documents in Róng script can also be found among the scanned papers of the Sikkim Palace archives, digitized by the Project Tenzng under the direction of Semla Bema Abrahams, and accessibly at the British Library website as well. The most eminent treasury within Europe is, however, the Johan van Manen collection of Lepcha manuscripts at the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. Van Manen, himself a Dutchman, held the assignment as General Secretary of the Asiatic Society of Bengal from 1923 to 1939. He was an ardent collector of ancient manuscripts, not only to possess them, but more importantly, to understand their message. No wonder he spent more than 2 years near Darjeeling studying Tibetan language with tutors associated with Yiga Chuling Monastery at Kum. And throughout his academic research, he enjoyed closest cooperation with local experts like Karma Samde Paul, also known as Karma Babu, and Phuntsog Lungtok, present in this photograph taken at Van Maane's Calcutta office around 1924. The Leiden Library offers a corpus of around 180 Lepcha manuscripts in high-resolution scans that can be viewed and downloaded freely by anyone. The collection is online since 2014 and was made available at the Institute's own initiative. So, if more local owners of manuscripts would share their treasures as generously, we'd likely know much more about the heritage and language of the Róng community. Unfortunately, it must be said that many Rongkok jealously hide their gems from the study by interested researchers, as well as from the attention of a wider public. Without intention to diminish the merits of countless Rongkup and Rongmit, it may come as a surprise that much of the groundbreaking linguistic research and grammatical analysis of the Lepcha language is owed to Westerners. First and foremost, Christian missionaries. Names such as Start, Niebel, Stölke, McKean, Mennering, Waddell, Grünwedel, Nebeski Wojkowicz, Sprick, Plaisir, without claim to be exhaustive, line up to a remarkable sequence of dedicated researchers. The same can be said in regard to Lepcha typography. Christian missionaries pushing to the northeast were in need of printed religious tracts in local languages for the spread of the gospel. For the reverends and fathers unfolding their zeal in the area of Darjeeling and Kalimpong, Sikkim proper was forbidden territory until around 1890. Local language meant Rong Aring in the first instance, which says a lot about the status of the language at that period. It's safe to assume that the evangelists chose the language that promised widest access to the local flock, just as much as their initial assistants emerging from among the first converts were predominantly Rong folk. Seen in the photograph here, the Western gentleman standing at the right is Dr. Graham in his younger years. Lepcha was used as the primary language of evangelization until dropped in favor of Nepali by the Protestant missionaries around 1930. A disloyalty too hard to digest for a considerable number of Lepcha converts, especially in Kalimpong. The Reverend Francis Sittling and many of his clanmates thus changed allegiance and became Roman Catholics. The Catholic Church was somewhat surprised at the unexpected joinings. However, they were all too welcome in St. Peter's hitherto rather meager local flock, while, quid pro quo, their language was held in due esteem at the new confraternity. For their typographical requirements, the missionaries found reliable partners at the Baptist Mission Press at Calcutta. A set of movable types for Lepcha was cast under the supervision of Reverend James Thomas in the 1840s. We presume he did so on the directions provided by his clients working on site. We can say with absolute certainty, however, that he created the tool of a century. The types of the Reverend Thomas were to shape the general perception of the script for at least 150 years. Used for translations of the Christian gospel, produced in-house, or Mennering's grammar of the Róng language, McKean's Lepcha primer, for example, the Baptist font holdings at Calcutta were literally unique. Whoever wanted to have Lepcha Script printed elsewhere had to resort to expressive photolithographic procedures. As far as we know, the Róng types were in use to the 1970s, when the Baptist Mission Press closed down and sold the equipment at scrap metal prices for recycling. From the unknown beginnings to the year 2000, Lepcha text meant basically handwritten Lepcha text, with the few exceptions mentioned before, and to a high degree this holds true to the present day. All the same, at the turn of the millennium, the groundbreaking potential of the lately developed digital options in text processing were perceived by a few progressive minds and literally bit by bit explored with the release of the first true type fonts. The first one was Shipmu, designed and developed by Ryen Stefan from Sikkim, and this was released in April 2001. And shortly after, Deji Lepcha was published, a font designed by Jason Glavey, a US American, and released in November 2001. We see two samples right here. Due to their custom encoding, the two fonts form a closed system. Since they merely represent Lepcha shapes pasted on a Latin encoded font system, a text written in one of them can only be displayed in the same font again. Opening a document on a system which does not provide the respective font results in meaningless rows of Latin characters. According to Latin writing direction, input has to be strictly done in the order of glyphs from left to right, which more often than not differs drastically from the spelling. The term Rongkup, for example, has to be typed in a sequence showed in red below the two samples. With these fonts, accurate placement of the components is a virtual challenge, and we see that the syllabic cluster often appear to be aesthetically unsatisfactory. Apart from these shortcomings, and more importantly, they face technological obsolescence shortly after their launch, as the Unicode Consortium endeavored to incorporate Lepcha into its global encoding system. Unicode is an IT standard for the consistent encoding, representation, and handling of text expressed in most of the world's writing systems. The first standard was published in 1991. Meanwhile, we've reached version 14, encompassing around 100 different scripts. Unicode is cross-platform and makes it possible to distinctly recognize and handle characters by unique codes. The fonts are interchangeable, and a lepcha text written in any one of them can be restyled with another one on the fly. Moreover, input of characters in Unicode is done according to spelling. A detailed and well-researched proposal for the inclusion of Róng in Unicode was submitted in 2002. Hence, the first implementation of the Lepcha script in Unicode, which we see here a sample of, the Lepcha language kit for OS X, released by Xenotype Technologies in 2003, represented true spirit of avant-garde, but required the other side of the coin, slight adjustments after the final adoption of the standard in 2008. The font used Jason Glavis glyphs, representing themselves a copy of Reverend Thomas's characters to a large extent. However, in a completely different encoding system, holding to the standards of Unicode. The software by Xenotype is no longer available, unfortunately. Upon the demise of developer Daniel Kay in 2003, Xenotype closed down business activities. Kay's typographic legacy is feared lost. One of the most demanding aspects of the Róng script for font developers is the clustering of glyphs known as collation in typographic nomenclature. While, as mentioned, Latin runs strictly from left to right, the same is true for Tibetan, with the additional difficulty of having to deal with vertical stacks of up to 4 glyphs. Lepcha collation, however, is erratic, resulting at times in virtual hops across any direction and in any sequence thinkable. Up to 2 glyphs may be attached to the left, to the bottom, and to the top, while up to 3 glyphs may follow to the right of the initial. This represents the most unusual feature of the script, occasionally bringing forth vowels entirely written from right to left, or more commonly, clusters formed in a zigzag pattern, which often requires a reordering of the glyphs typed just before. Considering the complex arrangement of the glyphs, it's fully comprehensible that not a single attempt was ever made to develop a Lepcha typewriter. In consequence, this also led to the lack of an established keyboard layout for Róng Areng on computers, since these were usually adopted from those of the respective typewriters. Based on the advanced potential of the OpenType font format, jointly developed by Microsoft and Adobe, 2 eminent companies set about creating Unicode fonts for Róng Ring. They have had casual updates, and they work quite reliably meanwhile. We see here listed as number 4, Mingsat, of which SIL International initiated the development in 2011. The glyphs are Jason Glavis again, and Mingsat is distributed free of charge under an open font license, available at the SIL Computer and Writing Systems page. Listed here as number 5 is Noto Sans Lepcha, a font developed by the Google Noto team since 2003. And this font now represented a virtual breakthrough. As mentioned earlier, the design of the glyphs by the Reverend Thomas had an enormously formative and lasting effect on the perception of the Lepcha script for many generations. This is not only owed to the fact that his types were the only ones available for a very long time. It is as much due to Jason Glavy's replication of the Baptist design, saving it into the digital era. And as you can see, of the 5 fonts released between 2001 and 2013, 3 use his version of Thomas's characters, marked red in our font comparison list here, which further cemented his notion of the script, including presumable faults. Comparing the Baptist characters to older handwritten papers, we realize a fact forgotten despite being most evident. The undertaking of the Baptist Mission Press represented the evolutionary transition from handwriting to print and called for a narrowed down choice out of a multitude of shapes and styles. For the Reverend Thomas, simplicity and uniformity was an absolute imperative. The manuscripts, however, display an unmatched richness, illustrated here with the simple syllable cut, extracted from a random choice of manuscripts available as scans. To get back briefly to the topic of origin treated earlier, the samples of variant shapes could be doubled in number easily. The emergence of such diversity requires time, all the more as writing wasn't everybody's pastime in the 17th and 18th century. Remember that to be a scribe was a respected profession and skilled personnel was much sought after. Considering further that Asian cultures generally do not excel in terms of creativity, but rather in reproduction true to tradition, the emergency of this range of variants took, in my humble opinion, longer than a mere 100 years, which is why we have to consider the script was developed prior to the reign of Chogyal Jagdornamgyal. So, why shouldn't one revive that calligraphic opulence of aged manuscripts using the potential of modern technology? Accordingly, Toshi Omagari took a liberal approach, designing a truly fresh set of Lepcha characters, and he ventured to correct at least one of the annoying faults in the traditional look. While in Thomas's font, the vowel signs for A and O look exactly the same and are the reason for confusion, especially among learners and unexperienced readers, Omagari reintroduced a different design of Jomingakub A with a small hook or flag. The first 2 verses of Psalm 67, a sample extracted from a Baptist print, clearly demonstrate the Calcutta type makers weren't fully certain about the vowel sign O. Is it a curve written in one stroke, or does it consist of 2 separate glyphs? Or maybe, is it even a combination of the vowel sign O combined with Ramchet, as handwritten text preserved would suggest? Glavy decidedly defines the glyph as a 1-stroke bend, which, by the way, were impossible to write with a broad-nibbed bamboo or reed pen. The same oval sign in the Noto font yet consists of a slightly curved stroke down and a horizontal top stroke to the right. So the modern look of the glyphs designed by Toshi Omagari partly reverts to the shaping of characters found in handwritten older documents. And it is much to the credit of the Japanese developer to have left the beaten path of just reproducing more or less the characters created by the Reverend James Thomas. Unintentionally, but in full conformity with Murphy's Law, Noto-san's Lepcha unveils its persisting flaw in the first line. Here, combinations and of final consonants and rantiet are still invariably misplaced in this Noto Lepcha font. Since in 2015, the two Unicode fonts available showed yet grave flaws, SIBLAC launched an initiative to overcome the digital gap in regard to Róng typography. After a development period of close to 1 year, we released Rongkit, a package containing fully functional Unicode fonts and keyboard files for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, meaning Debian forks of Linux. While the font Menering Róng represents a classical look with shapes as if written with a broad-nibbed bamboo pen, Dawa Lepcha, the second sample here, has a more modern look with linear and rounded profile, which blends quite well with Latin sans serif fonts. And the third in the set, Rongryuk Mono, represents an altogether different approach with a highly abstract look and monospaced characters, meaning they all have the same width, which may not be suitable for entire pages of text, but an option for titles, headlines, accentuations, or the like. So for a number of years, we have had a few different Unicode fonts available. However, their impact on native writers is close to nil, barring a few using the Noto font as part of some Android distributions. The great majority, however, cleaves to either handwriting or the first two workaround fonts. In Sikkim, this is mainly Shipmu, while in Kalimpong, JG Lepcha appears to be the preferred one. It looks like the Róng community, having suffered a grave loss of lore and equally absorbed with the revival or reconstruction of tradition, has little liking for the achievements of modern technology, at least in this regard. Maybe will just require another 150 years. Though perhaps not apparent at first sight, the advantages of Unicode are revolutionary, singular, and far-reaching. A lecture text written in Unicode can be copied, pasted, revised, restyled, displayed, shared, searched, and used in websites as native text instead of in unreadable images. And this is available in any IT environment. The technology thus provides full exchangeability without regard to application or operating system. And by the way, Google, Facebook, Instagram, and the like, they understand Lepcha as well, provided it's written in Unicode. I'd like to end this brief presentation with what Buddhist masters usually put to the very beginning of their reflections. Please don't just believe me. Listen to what I tell you, then scrutinize my words. If they appear to be trustworthy, keep them close to your heart. If they do not pass your verification, forget about them. I consider your long and undivided attention an undeserved honor. Ladies and gentlemen, best thanks. And as a last, I'd like to show you the link to a small handout, which is really only a link list. You can find it and save it for yourself at siblak.org/webinar.pdf, where I collected all the links to the repositories of manuscripts at the European universities, as well as the pages where to download Unicode fonts. So you just type that into the address line of your browser and you'll get that document opened. And now really my final slide. My congrats to the team at the Róng Society. I was very amused with the wordplay they inserted into the flyer for that webinar. Wrong script, but right stuff. Thank you very much. Back to Ryen Jordan.
Thank you very much, Ryen Stefan, for your wonderful presentation. The walkthrough was an incredible learning experience in so many different dimensions. And I am sure a lot of the participants of this webinar have quite a few questions to ask, because I've been receiving different questions and comments in the chat box. But before we proceed to the question and answer session of the webinar, I have a small announcement to make. So this is in regard to the next batch of the Róng Language School, which is the flagship program of our society, of the Róng Lepcha Culture and Welfare Society. And this is to inform that batch 10 will be commencing from April. And we would like to encourage everybody to be a part of this initiative. And all of you all who are interested to learn the Lepcha language can get in contact, get in touch with the RLCWS through our Facebook and Instagram handles. And we really encourage you to be a part of this learning experience because the Róng Language School has seen an incredible success. We have had more than 200 students from across the globe who's actually learned the Lepcha language in these past few months. So I'd urge everybody to come and be a part of the Róng Language School. Thank you very much. Now we shall move to the question and answer session. So I have a couple of questions and some people are raising their hands as well. So we will go chronologically. So the first question, Ryen Stefan, is by Ryen STS Lepcha. And he asks if there are any relation between the Lepcha script and the South Indian script, example Tamil, etc. In terms of a layman's point of view, so he sees a certain similarity. So he's asking whether you see any relationship between the Lepcha script and certain South Indian scripts like Tamil.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm no specialist on South Indian scripts. I must admit. It looks like Róng Aring has certain similarities with Tibetan, which is itself again a derivative of Brahmi script. But I always considered Lepcha script as something special, and something on its own. And I never felt the need to search for older links. So I'm probably the wrong one to answer that question really in depth.
Right. Thank you so much. We have another question from Chungsung Lepcha. So this is a two-part. So the first part is, I'll read the question. What is Lepcha Script known as? Okay. And the second one seems interesting. So the question is Panu Munsulong a reincarnation of Guru Padma Sambhav?
Again, I don't know. I don't think he was a reincarnation of Guru Rinpoche, because I just came across prophecies made by Guru Rinpoche that Munsulong would await the Yuksam, the three Tibetans, to show them Maya Liang. But I've never heard of that notion that he could be a reincarnation of Guru Rinpoche. On the other hand, I found a very interesting hint recently, and that is that Sangchen Pema Yangtze, the premier monastery of Sikkim, considered Kongchen Bongting Samdup Daso to be a reincarnation of Munsulong.
Renu Nandini Bhattacharya has also raised a hand. So Renu, if you had anything to ask.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordan.
Yes,
Actually, I am not a linguist, not at all, but I'm a historian. So I have some questions relating to history. One thing I gathered, just whether I'm right or wrong, you please correct it, that you suggest that Lepcha script is a product of Tibetan intervention. So, or if not, was there before the Tibetan came in Sikkim, was there any Lepcha script? This is my first question. Because there is no straightforward answer. Sprigg has written a lot about it, but I mean, it is in a twilight zone. This is one thing. And secondly, my question is, Arthur Phoning, his statements, his ideas and his presentations, his opinions and views, what I understood after reading several times is lopsided. So if you use some of his opinions and views, do you think that it has to be kind of cross-examined about script and about the lepcha? Because he very clearly said that lepchas are a dying race. This is this is an uncomfortable question, but I am a bit intrigued, as I used to do and still now do some research on the lecture community. And my third question is, there are some efforts, KP Thamsang, like Sonam Sering Lepcha, and like many other people, they also try to revive the script and the linguistic tradition. So I just want to mention it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think we are in full agreement. I don't think I said that Tibetan Lepcha Script was initiated or done by Tibetans, so that you must have got wrong. I firmly believe, but it's a belief. We have no proof, lacking all the documents. I firmly believe that's a creation from within the community itself, and it's something of its own. I think that the approach by Arthur Foding was a revolutionary one. He really liberally inquired and examined the traditions that were around. And I do not know whether he is right. I do not know whether I'm wrong. It's, as I said, it's just a matter of sounding plausible or not. For the third one, that wasn't the question, if I understood that right. It was just a statement, which is absolutely in my sense. I know there are many lectures doing a lot, and I just listed the Western contributors to highlight their merits in the whole story, but I virtually don't want to downplay or diminish all the achievements and contributions done by the lecturers themselves. So I'm in absolute agreement with yourself. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you. No, I didn't mean anything. I just reminded. And finally, I just want to mention that now in Sikkim University, students can write their thesis in Lepcha language. I'm sure you know that, but well, I feel very happy about it. That's all.
Sure.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am, for your question, Renu, for your question, and thank you very much, Ren, for your response. We have two hands that are raised. One is from Ryen Stefan Daehler, but before I go to Ryen Stefan Daehler, I want to go to Ryen Chuksung Lepcha.
Thank you, Ren. Coming to Ryen Stefan, and thanks to the organizer first. I am Chuksung Lepcha from Sikkim. I am Vice President of Sikkim Literary Association, elected very currently. Though I have very little knowledge about language and literature, but I have some queries. One of them has been cleared by Ryen Stefan. My next question, which was put on by Ryen Jordan, but I could not get the answer. What is the Róng script known as first?
Yes, Ryen Stefan. So Ryen Chuksung essentially wants to ask, what is the Róng script actually known as? Or
Yes. As far as I know, there are different terms for the same. Some folks just use Lotsong as a term for the script as a whole. Mm-hmm. Some speak of Mingzat. Others call it Rong Choming. In the Unicode standard, it's named Róng and in brackets Lepcha.
I hope
that's all I can tell you.
I hope this answers your question, Ryen Chuksung.
There is Mansalong script out here in Sikkim, and in some dictionary we found Róng Aring, only Róng Aring. So my next question is, though you have cleared who invented the Lepcha script, but then I have some queries. As per the Gazetteer of Sikkim by H.S. Risri, Róng script was invented by Chakdor Namgyal. And then another one is Ren Sonam Thiring.
Yeah, Ren, we are losing you again. So I think we can go ahead with the first question.
Well, what I can say is about the report by Risley in the Gazetteer of Sikkim.
Just a second. one more book by Nima Teknilmu in Lepcha Jati ko Utpatti ko Katha. He mentions some members of the committee who invented the Lepcha script, and the members are Dungrap, Gole, Sayun, Doring, and Dolep. So, can you have any comment on this, or is it the Munsalong he himself who invented the Lepcha script? Thank you.
Well, again, I must be clear that I do not know. I just deliberated on what I regard as being probable and other theories that look improbable to me, but how it actually was, I do not know, because I wasn't alive at that time. So that's a point we certainly can't find a final answer to. We are here just in a field of speculations.
Absolutely.
To the report of recently in the Gazetteer of Sikkim, I just must say he's citing the royal history of Sikkim, and the invention by Chakdor Namgyal is the version of the history of Sikkim. To me, it doesn't sound convincing. But again, I can be wrong.
Should we move on to the next question?
1 minute.
Ryen Sinha has been raising his hand. So I think we should give him an opportunity to ask the question. Yes, Ryen. May I request the rest to kindly turn off your microphones? Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan, for this opportunity for providing us. First, I would like to thank all the organizers. I have just started to explore Lepcha language, though I was interested for a very long period of time, for more than 20 years, but I recently started to explore with a student in Sikkim University. I'm basically a linguist by training, and I do teach linguistics in Sikkim University. And since my interest basically in linguistics started with Lepcha, but I'm unfortunately starting from this season onwards. So far, my basic understanding of Lepcha is very little. But what I know for certain is that Lepchas, they do have a syllabic system of writing. So if you look into the very first case of Tamil also derived from Brahmi, which is also the core of is Akshar. In Indian tradition, it is called Akshar, or you can call it as syllable. Whereas Tibetan is also Aksharic system or Akshara-based system. So therefore, you can see at one level, at the very high level of abstraction between these two scripts, they are both syllabic system. That's why in Lepcha, we do have Lazong, the syllabic scheme and all. So you can find a kind of a similarity between two at the very high level. But at the level of physical shape, size, and forms, as well as stacking, I don't know much about the stacking, but I know a little bit about if it is in coda position and if it is unreleased. It seems to be have a stacking even of the consonants, which is not very unique because even Devanagari has got similar things. So it looks like at a system that it's a Brahmi based or at least evolved from a Brahmi because of a syllabicity. Otherwise, had it been, then Lazong won't be there. So that's one fact. And regarding Lepcha script, we explored in Sikkim University first Sitmo, and I was already working on this Glacian, but we found that it is not unique with compatibility, and we were not able to use it. We planned to write it, our thesis also in LaTeX. So we were trying to explore it. So we found that SIL Minjat works well with GLaTeX, because the university students need to write their thesis. So we are thinking of introducing LaTeX to them. So other fonts might work, but then again, we started, I think SIL fonts will be much better, though we don't have any association with SIL in Sikkim University, but at least for linguistic resources, we do use all over the world. So that's, I think, one area, but I think Stephen can tell me more about what is the actual system, is it the Abhiguda system? Has it developed outside Aksharic system and it has become an Abhiguda system? Or what is the kind of a writing system they do have?
It's definitely considered an Abhugida system. Yes.
Is it not Aksharic? Because Aksharic is something different from Abhiguda.
Okay. I'm not a specialist, but what I can tell you is that Unicode and the consortium, there are a lot of highly specialized experts in the committee. They consider it as Abhugida.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I hope that answers your question,
Yeah.
Ren. We also had Renu Ripandi Lepcha, who had raised her hand.
Thank you. Coming more to all, Stefan, thank you so much for that very detailed sort of development of TypeScripts happening currently. You spoke about this erratic, say, Lepcha
Collation.
Yes,
Yes.
Lepcha collation happening. So what would be your suggestion in terms of overcoming such erraticism in terms of TypeScript? That was one part of the question. And I am so sorry I joined very late because I couldn't get off a previous obligation. I was wondering whether, since you are so well read, you have so much resources at your disposal, I was wondering if you had come across any namthars which sort of, because namthars, were initially handwritten, so there were a lot of variations happening there as well, not just in TypeScript, which you explained that certain variations are coming about. But I was wondering where it concerns the namthars, could the namthars be one of the reasons why all these erraticism has occurred, because it depended on the handwriting of the scribe. So I was wondering whether all these variations were creeping up because of that.
Okay, erratic collation is just a fact. It's inborn. It's the system. And erratic just is from the point of view of the font developer. That means that to cluster these syllables is quite complicated and can't be compared with the clustering in other languages or other scripts. So that's why I called it erratic. But that's a purely technical view on the matter. The collation is given. The collation exists like this, and I see nothing wrong in it, and that's fine. That's a Lepcha script. But for us font developers, it's quite a challenge to get that done.
So would say, because Lazong and even the way we write script, how we follow the strokes, would that help in terms of font developers take on that, cue in terms of this should be followed, you should write the akup first, or the, first, whatever it is. If you follow that, would that kind of do away with the erraticism that occurs, or wouldn't that be helpful at all?
No, again, that erraticism is absolutely okay, and it's system inherent. So you can't and you don't have to change that. It's again, it's really only the difficulty to emulate or to create that in computer code. That's the difficulty. But it's absolutely clear the order of writing is given. So we first write the initial letter, usually called Amu in Lepcha, and then we add the vowel signs, and then come the medials maybe, and finally the finals. That is given, and that's absolutely okay. It's just the placement in the cluster that is quite tricky to get it done in computer code.
I hope that answers your question, Renu. Thank you.
May I ask another question in the meanwhile?
Okay. Yes, okay.
Stefan, I just wanted to know, in terms of subject matter of the namthars, there seems to be a large debate as to what the namthars contain. So this is, I know it's not related to the TypeScript topic that you were discussing today, but I was wondering whether you came across any namtars which were very different in terms of dealing with the subject matter that the current existing namtars deal with. So usually these are all, they are considered to be, say, copied from or a translation of Buddhist manuscripts. But I was wondering if you came across any namtar which has a different subject matter altogether.
We must be clear that historically, I spoke of namtars in the Tibetan sense, while in Lepcha, namtar has a slight different meaning, a broader meaning. It means old text generally. Now, of all the Lepcha texts I know and I've come in touch with, I'm of the opinion that the Dratsang is definitely the oldest one. It's purely Lepcha. There is no trace of Buddhist influence to be found in the Dratsang. And for me, it's the arch book of Lepcha literature.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you so much, Ryen. Okay, I will now open the floor to just 3 questions because I think we're closing down on a time limit. Ryen Charles, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me, Dr. Jordan?
Yes, not a doctor yet, in the process, but yeah. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Kamrimo Ryen Stefan, it's a very simple question that I have. You said the glyphs are causing a problem in the intonation between the 2 varieties of fonts that are developing. The only question that I have is, are the sounds compatible, or can it be represented by the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabets?
Yes. Of course it can. Of course it can. However, you have to have an experienced speaker to really translate a text just written in Lepcha script into a really perfect IPA script. IPA, for those who don't know, is Latin script that exactly gives the pronunciation of the words. The different sounds from o, u are clearly differentiated there. But it would require an experienced Lepcha speaker, Lepcha reader to transcribe that into IPA. But of course, doable.
Thank you very much for your response. I think Ryen James has also raised his hand.
This is quite a simple question, because if you look up Google and Wikipedia, you will always find that the Lepcha language has been derived from the Tibeto-Burman stream. It is supposed to be a Tibeto-Burman language. But after this seminar, and what Ryen Stefan personally thinks, I think this Google and Wikipedia needs a rewriting, a correction as to the derivation of Lepcha language from the Tibeto-Burman stream. Am I correct, Ryen?
No, my friend, you are wrong. Tibeto-Burman means a large family of languages, which includes Eastern Chinese languages, Assamese languages, Tibetan languages, certain dialects spoken in Nepal, and Dzongkhe, Lokhe, and Róng, Aring as well. So that's a large family. That's a group of languages, and Lepcha is definitely at the right place in this language family.
Okay, as a Tibeto, so it is well, so it is well placed in the Tibeto-Burman group. Am I right?
Yes, right.
Okay. Thank you, Ryen. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Pleasure to meet you, James.
Okay, so I think we've approached...
Same here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. Are we done with the exchanges? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think we've approached the end of the question and answer session. And before we close down, I'd like to make a small comment. So I am particularly not training in the field of linguistics. I am trying to be, build a niche for myself in anthropology, right? But when you look at orthography, Ryen Stefan, so there's a certain objective element to it. So this is just a comment. There's a certain objective element to it, but the way you trace the genealogy, of the script, I think it kind of breaks the the sort of an ontological image that the origin of the Lepcha language has encapsulated over the years, because I think it's always on a tautology that, okay, when you try to trace the language, it goes from, from histories and empirical evidences to myths. And when, that happens, there's a tendency, even in the academia, to look at such a fact in a very hagiographical manner, if I may put it. So I think your presentation, when I said earlier that it was a very, very enriching experience, of course, the Unicode is, in another different level altogether now that Google can speak Lepcha. But, I think it comes, your claim of Tikung Menselom, of course, again, like I do not say this as a true false statement, as you had mentioned earlier, but something that makes sense, which, is quite befitting to the liberal inquiry, right? So I think this comes as a very, very refreshing departure on the crystallized history, that has very, very strong colonial and bureaucratic, impingements. So I just wanted to make that comment. And thank you so much for your wonderful webinar and your wonderful presentation. It is really, really been a learning experience. So the webinars that the RLCWS organizes, we have different kinds of webinars, because it's not just a presentation or a scholarly. So we have musical webinars and all of that. Today was a webinar that was, of course, a presentation of the paper, but it was very different. So the flavor to it, I think, was very unique, and I'd like to thank Ryen Stefan for his wonderful presentation, his way of presentation in a very nice sing-song soothing manner, and it was brilliant. And I see how you are a teacher of music, and that's it shows on your presentation. So I would now like to proceed to the vote of thanks, and I cannot start this by not thanking Ryen Stefan Daehler. Agyap Tokchimo Ryen for accepting the invitation and agreeing to deliver your wonderful presentation. I, on behalf of the RLCWS, sincerely put forth the entire gratitude of all the members of the society. Thank you so much. And I hope our relationship does not end here. I hope we can work together in future, exploring different avenues of similar interests. Thank you so much, Ryen Stefan.
Pleasure is mine, absolutely. Thank you very much to everyone.
So much. Yes. I'd like to now move to thank Ryen President Ryen Gideon Namchu, President of the Society. Thank you so much, Ryen President, for your unwavering support. And thank you for your wisdom, for always, helping us channelize our aspirations and our dreams into tangible, meaningful outcomes. Thank you so much. I think that way the Society is greatly indebted to you. Thank you so much. I would like to now thank the webinar organizing team, especially Renu Gaffring, Ren Zera Rongong, and also Renu Ivy Namchu. Thank you so much for all the core members for your invaluable inputs and your constant underlying support. I would also like to thank our teachers, Lapon Renu Jongmuk Lepcha and Lapon Ren Riam Lepcha, without which the school, the Rongmuk school, would not be functioning. So thank you so much. And last but not the least, I would like to thank all the attendees, all of the people who've taken out their afternoon time and who've sat through the length of this presentation. Thank you so much. We see this act of yours as not just attending Ryen Stefan's webinar, but also an association that you have, actively built with the RLCWS. So thank you so much. And I think with that, we should put a close to our webinar. Achule and Agyap Tokchimo. Thank you so much.